just went black on us, and so we had to start a new video. If you're watching that video, please tune into this video now. I don't know what happened. I understand that this is what you guys are seeing. So,
is anybody even in this?
yeah, we have one person until it gets started again. We'll try to see if I can start. Okay, I'm so sorry that happened. It just went black. We did not even touch it. I don't know what happened. So I'm so sorry. I need to turn this more to you. Okay.
It still says live on mine.
Yeah, I don't know why it's saying that, because now we're on live. I don't even know how to end the other one. If you guys are great with YouTube, let me know. Obviously, I'm new to this. Yeah, I don't know how to end it. I don't even know how to say it. Okay, well, we're on this one, so we're gonna just start talking from where we left off. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Here, go back to
I need to hire people to help me, I think.
Just like rewrite this word and then hit save.
Rewrite what word?
Like delete that word and then just retype it just so it looks like you've done something
There's nothing.
new.
Oh. Okay. Okay, so maybe the other one will save and we can just start anew with this one from where we left off. I believe we were on page 36 of the arrest affidavit. So if you're just joining us, I'm so sorry we had technical difficulties. We are going through the arrest affidavit of Barry Morphew. He is presumed innocent until he is found guilty by a jury. His jury trial is set for May of 2022. He is out on bond, $500,000 right now. This arrest affidavit is nearly 130 pages. We are going through it from our notes. We both have read it multiple times. We're just going to go through real quickly new information. So page 36, we're going through the timeline of what he did Mother's Day, May 10th of 2020, the day that Suzanne Morphew was reported missing. You know, at 8:41 a.m., he texts Suzanne, "I made it to Broomfield. Call me when you get a chance." At 10:50 to 11:17 a.m., it's a 27-minute time period. His truck is at Men's Warehouse parking lot. His passenger door and his driver's door opens and closes at least 7 times. And he can't remember, whenever he's asked about that, he can't remember, you know, what he did that day.
Yeah.
As far as he doesn't even mention Men's Warehouse to investigators. At noon, 12:06 p.m., Barry calls Mallory. And obviously Mallory probably is at this point asking, you know, her dad, like, I can't get a hold of Mom. I've wished her a happy Mother's Day. I'm kind of getting worried about her. Macy's also texted her happy Mother's Day. And so at noon, he had already, his flares, his warning signs, his curiosity as far as where Suzanne is or what she's doing should have already been going, you know, flashing.
Yeah.
Flashing. But he doesn't even text Suzanne until 3:30 saying, "Call me." Yep. And again, he never calls law enforcement this entire day. He never calls and picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I can't find my wife. My daughters can't get a hold of her. I can't get a hold of her." He never does that this entire day. At 5:15 and at 5:45 p.m., he receives an incoming call from Jean Ritter. So this is a 30-minute difference. And she's, you know, she was asked by Mallory to go over to the house to look for Suzanne. She can't find her, you know. Then Barry, you know, tells her to go back over to Suzanne, to the house to see if there's a bike there. Maybe she went on a bike ride. So she calls him back at 5:45, and then after that, he, you know, Jean Ritter calls the sheriff's office, and it starts the whole missing persons case at 5:45. But you got to remember, there's not activity from her cell phone that day, except, well, I guess at 4:23 a.m. from a tower.
Yep.
But as far as communicating with anyone that day. And then, so, he calls Martin Ritter at 6:05 p.m. And at 6:09 p.m., he calls Morgan Gentile, claiming that there's a family emergency and that, she would be on her own pretty much.
Yeah, and that she needed to get there that night with somebody.
Yeah. And then at 6:12 p.m., he's leaving the hotel parking lot.
And prior to leaving, he says that he's going to leave tools for his crew for when they get there on Monday to do the job. And from the surveillance video, it looks like all he really leaves is some hand tools. And that's pretty much like a shovel, a rake, like really small things that later Morgan says there's no way they would have been able to work on the wall with the tools that he had left behind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he gets a call, or he calls Mallory again at 6:20 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he has not called Suzanne.
Yep.
He has not called investigators. He misses a call from investigators at 7:10 p.m. And then at 7:21 p.m., he finally calls Suzanne. He's
2 hours after he's made aware that they can't find her.
And he's already 70 miles from Broomfield on Highway 285. He's already abandoned his job and told his crew that, I got to go for a family emergency, but he never called Suzanne to see if he could get a hold of her before sounding the alarms. And in this affidavit, it mentions that, he made no independent effort to determine whether she was simply not answering her phone due to poor cell service before abandoning his work project. He left tools in the lobby and left town.
Yep.
We're on page 38. At 7:33 p.m., the sheriff's office dispatch called Barry to inform him about finding her bike. And he said, they found a bike? Did they find the phone?
And at this point, they said that he started crying when he was asking about the bike.
And they note that Barry did not ask if Suzanne was found. Yep. This is page 39. On May 28th's interview, during the investigation on May 28th, they learned about the WhatsApp and the LinkedIn installed on Suzanne's phone and iCloud accounts. On May 7th, Suzanne had sent a text to Barry at 4:43 p.m. saying, been studying all afternoon, I'm gonna bike now. I've got veggie soup on for supper. This is page 39. May 8th, so they're kind of going backwards again. So they're talking about the days prior to Mother's Day. On May 8th at 8:43 a.m., Suzanne texted Barry saying, sorry, I forgot about Rob Mizell last night, but I will continue to do your invoicing when you need to. So this is in reference to after she had already said, I'm done text. This is before Suzanne had texted Melinda. She was planning to continue to do his books.
And this was also, investigators said that in the I'm done text, she said, let's handle this civilly. And they interpreted this text as her way of doing that, implying, she's done with the marriage, but we're going to work this out civilly. I'll still invoice for your business and everything like that, but still saying, she's done with the marriage. This is just their peaceful way of handling it.
This is a text that's really interesting. This is a text from Macy to Miles on May 10th at 3:50 p.m. So this is obviously after Mallory had talked to Barry, and it was over an hour before Martin Ritter and Jean Ritter had reported Suzanne missing. Over an hour before, she had said to her boyfriend in a text, quote, "I'm just so sad, and Mallory and I texted Mom for Mother's Day, and she still hasn't answered. I'm scared her and Dad probably got in a big fight, and I don't even know. It just made me want to be gone even more because I don't want to be around them. It hurts me, and I know if blank, it's redacted, is working, I'm possibly Mallory is working, I might have to be home a lot more, and it'll probably be the worst summer of my life." I bet it's been the worst year and a half, 2 years of her life now since this all has happened.
And I feel like that says a lot, again, because she was at home, so she knew that they were having a lot of problems, and the fact that her very first instinct, before even, anybody reported that her mom was missing, she's immediately concerned and thinks that it has something to do with the, marital issues that they were having.
This is page 40 if you want to look back at that text. On May 23rd, this is a really interesting, and I think investigators, I hope that they look more into this.
I'm surprised it didn't get brought up more in the preliminary hearing.
Yeah, this is not something that was brought up in the prelim. On May 23rd, 3 different canines with 3 different handlers were used. Each canine was ran blindly and individually, and all 3 canines did their trained final response alerted on top of the trailer, which was sitting next to the Bobcat. On the bed of the trailer, there is gravel and dirt. There's in that area. This is an area that the canines alerted. They all alerted on the Bobcat, and one even jumped and laid down on the driver's seat. So again, this is canines that they didn't go into detail as far as what specific canines were trained for what. Like if one is a cadaver dog and if one is a I don't know what other,
like a drug dog or something.
Drug dog,
yeah.
Different.
I don't know what they're called.
Yeah. So they didn't go into detail about that, but I think it's really important, and I hope we will learn more about that in the trial.
Yeah.
On May 28th, FBI agent removed the Bobcat SIM card. It uses a Verizon Connect services and is a GPS tracking device. A search warrant has been requested to obtain what data is on the SIM card. But again, at present, they had mentioned that it doesn't appear that it was connected. But you got to remember, it looks like they are still trying to get that data from that SIM card.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to maybe wait and find out what that.
And I'm sure, kind of like we mentioned at the beginning of the first video,
Sorry.
I'm sure a lot of this has to do with why it took so long for them to make the arrest, because there was a lot of, fingerprints, telematics, different things like that from the phone and the truck that they had to collect data for and then go through. It's not like there was a lot of physical evidence. Like they've mentioned, there was no blood, they didn't find clothes, nothing like that. So it was a lot of looking through data and trying to make connections and putting a timeline together and stuff, which obviously is going to take a lot more time than simply saying, hey, we found this piece, look at it, or something like that.
Okay, on page 42, on May 26, just 16 days after Suzanne went missing, Morphew withdrew $5,846.22 from the Suzanne Morphew Foundation account, which brought the balance to 0.
He cleared that out completely.
And it's just 16 days after Suzanne went missing. And this account was opened in March. And then also on June 24th, so about a month later, Barry made a $20,000 deposit into that same bank, the Collegiate Peaks Bank in Salida, on Suzanne's behalf. And then they go into detail on page 42 about this second possible device that Barry Morphew had. There was 7 activities from May 5th through the 12th. And when this affidavit came out, when it was written, I should say, in early May, May 4th, when it was given to the Judge Patrick Murphy.
Yep.
He signed it, and at the time, this second device has not been identified.
Yeah.
Maybe it has right now, and maybe they're following leads to that. We don't know. It was first used on November 30th, this second device of 2019, and was associated with Barry's iPhone 91 times since then, and compared to 1,701 associations with the primary phone user ID since the same period.
Yeah.
So 91 times versus 1,700. Obviously, he used the primary one more so.
I apologize.
Sorry.
Hold on.
We have some puppies that are not happy. It's okay. They, on page 44, there was no workable DNA that was recovered from the Bobcat blade, the dart box, or the dryer. And again, that Bobcat, the data from that is still being, I think, obviously investigated from the SIM card. So now we're on page 44. They're talking about the DNA. And this was very interesting in the preliminary hearing. They're talking about that the DNA on the bike seat included a mixture of 4 people, Suzanne being primary, Barry, sheriff's office personnel, and a 4th male is unknown. But this mixture is at least 12 decillion times more likely to be observed if it originated from Barry or the sheriff's office personnel or Suzanne. So they're saying like it could have came from those individuals, not necessarily saying that that unknown male had touched the seat of the bike. So the DNA talk is on page 44. On June 1st, Barry Morphew petitioned for guardianship in Hamilton County, Indiana, for him to act as her guardian. This is less than a month since she went missing. On June 6th, he sold the Indiana home for $750,000. On February 24th, a deposit was made for $40,000 from Monex, and this is something that was a list on Suzanne's list of grievances. And on February, I don't know why I just said on 2020. I don't know why I said. Do you have that? Are you on that page? Oh, okay. I just missed the word June. On June.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what is 19? On June 19th, 2020, there was a check written for Barry Morphew for $30,000.
And I wonder if
that was deposited.
If that's the GoFundMe money.
Many people are wondering if that was the GoFundMe money.
Yeah.
And on June 25th, Barry had paid $160,000 for a property at Longhorn Ranch in Salida, but then he sold it back to the owners that he purchased it from on February 17th for $150,000. So he lost $10,000 on that property. Yeah. On July 13th, Morphew initiated a title change for Suzanne's Range Rover, so he sold her car. On March 3rd, Morphew sold the Puma Path home for $1.625 million.
This was in 2021.
Yes, so. Sorry, March 3rd of 2021. In a Morgan Gentile interview at 11:18 a.m. on May 10th, Barry called Gentile, telling her she would need to bring an additional person because the amount of work needed to repair the wall. Barry never explained why he left early or why he didn't pick her up. This is page 47. In Sheila Oliver's second interview on page 48, she said that money was a big issue between Suzanne and Barry. Barry was very controlling with his money. He insisted that Suzanne only used cash and that he would charge hunting equipment on his credit card. He also, it had mentioned that he had invested in the silver market, but it bottomed out. They also made note that Sheila Oliver's daughter, Hannah, was married on May 10th, and that Suzanne would not have missed it for the world.
Yeah.
And so I really think that Suzanne's friend, Sheila Oliver, really got the ball rolling as far as the investigation goes, saying, hey, something isn't right. You know, Suzanne's my best friend. She would never miss this wedding that my daughter had on May 10th. And she also didn't respond to my Snapchats that she always does, that were sent Saturday evening at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. And Sheila talked a lot about how whenever they were together and Barry wasn't around, he was very, very persistent on knowing exactly where Suzanne was and what she was doing. And so if he couldn't get a hold of Suzanne, he would call her numerous times, and if she didn't answer, then he would call Sheila. And then if Sheila didn't answer, there were times where he would even call Sheila's husband. So he was very, very persistent on trying to make sure that he knew exactly where Suzanne was and what she was doing at all times.
So we're now on to page 50. And this is a George Davis interview. That he found out, you know, he was first alerted to the whole situation when one of his fellow, I believe, firefighters told him about the bike being found near the Morphew home on an embankment, and then he called Barry Morphew allegedly around 5:30 to 6 p.m. He told CBI and FBI that his observation was that an abduction had taken place with a staged scene. On May 15th, CBI agents were told by Morgan Gentile that George Davis might be attempting to influence her future testimony. This is page 50. She told them also that insurance documents were found by Jeff Puckett under the pillow in that hotel room in Broomfield, but later they threw them away.
Yeah. And she noticed too that there were a lot of like wet used towels that were on the floor as well, so that kind of stood out to her too.
Okay, on Saturday, May 9th, after the beach job was completed, Morgan Gentile remembered an odd comment that Barry Morphew had said. Morgan said that she made a comment saying, you know, pigs could eat an entire human body in 2 hours. And Barry Morphew replied saying that he would be able to bury a body and it would, quote, never be found. This is page 50 of the arrest affidavit.
And we're not sure what prompted that conversation, but obviously that stood out to Morgan enough to mention in her interview.
Investigators, they had some other interviews with a lot of folks in Indiana. One involved a gentleman named John Schmitz, and it was claiming that in December of 2017, him and Barry Morphew had gotten into an altercation. Barry Morphew allegedly body bumped him, and John Schmitz, put him into a headlock, and he remembers seeing the evil, quote, in his eyes. And in May of 2018, they were charged with disorderly conduct, but Boone County Sheriff's Office in Indiana, they charged both of them with disorderly conduct, but all charges were later dropped. This is page 51 of the arrest affidavit. Another witness that was on the no contact list was Brad Oswald, and in his interview he had told investigators that he had known Barry for 20 years, and that on May 17th he had told investigators that this is just a few days after Suzanne went missing, 7 days. He had said, I was afraid to say what I thought, but I think Barry Morphew was so pissed off he accidentally killed her, quote. He added that Morphew was never wrong, and he was a big time controlling person over Suzanne Morphew.
And he talked about how, you know, Barry, in the business that he does, he works with a lot of, you know, big machinery that's capable of lifting a lot of heavy stuff, and he talked about Barry having the skid loader, and he said that Barry could have easily buried Suzanne, and that he's smart enough to turn off his phone or leave it at home, and said that he had all night to plan how to get rid of her. So I thought that was really telling, knowing that this is somebody who's known Barry for a very long time, said that they were good friends, and after hearing what had happened, had come to the conclusion that Barry was capable of doing something like this.
Another interview with an Indiana friend was that Kurt Sigler person who Barry Morphew had initially accused of having an affair with Suzanne. He had done an interview with investigators on May 17th as well, saying, in 2018, he had claimed, Kurt had claimed that Suzanne had told him that Barry Morphew was cheating on her with a girl from Indiana. In an interview with Gene Mormon, the first time Gene Mormon, which is Suzanne's dad, her own father, had first heard from Barry Morphew, Suzanne's husband, his, son-in-law. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Son-in-law.
Yeah.
Of Suzanne's disappearance was May 16th, 6 days after she was reported missing. Mm-hmm. And, Gene had mentioned to investigators that Barry said he was very emotional and going through a lot, and that's why he waited almost a week to call him.
Yeah.
He called and he sounded distraught. He said he felt bad and that the authorities were trying to already pin the disappearance and death. At that point, he said Suzanne's death on him.
Yeah.
And this is only 6 days after she's going missing.
Yeah.
So he's already feeling the heat from investigators.
Yeah.
And then an interview with Andrew Mormon, which is Suzanne's one of her brothers, the middle brother. He had said a few years ago Suzanne had found a woman's bracelet in Barry Morphew's truck, and she had confronted him about having an affair. This is years ago, before they moved to Colorado. And Barry Morphew's sister, Marcy, ended up taking and claiming the bracelet belonged to her. He said that Barry Morphew used to use the mountain lion because Andy Mormon went out to Colorado from Indiana initially to help search for Suzanne. Yep. And he had said that, the first 2 or 3 days, Barry Morphew used the idea of a mountain lion attack. But then before that, and then he changed that theory to saying that someone took Suzanne. And then he said that Andy Mormon had said that Barry Morphew could not get past the idea that Suzanne was being molested.
Yeah. And he even mentioned too, again, bringing up Barry's expertise with the skid loader, that he could have put her body anywhere on his way to Denver. And he also said that because he has that hunting background and knowledge, that he knows how to cover a scent by using skunk spray and is an exceptional hunter. And I wanted to go back to Kurt real quick. He had mentioned in his interview when he was being recorded that he didn't think Barry was capable of killing Suzanne, but then as soon as he was walking out the door, the recording was off and he was just talking to the agent, he kind of whispered to him, "I think he killed her." So I think that that's very interesting that on the record, he said that he didn't think Barry was capable of doing this, but as soon as the recording was turned off, he switched it and said that he did.
Now we're going to an interview from July 27th with a guy named Tim Clow. I hope I'm saying that right. This is page 53 of the arrest affidavit if you're following along. On Saturday, May 9th, so the big Saturday that investigators and prosecutors believe Suzanne was murdered was May 9th at 1:46 p.m. Barry Morphew texted Tim asking, "Are you around to look at your backhoe?" And Tim replied at 1:49, a few minutes later, "No, but you can drive by and have a look." And he gave the address to where the backhoe was. Tim said he doesn't know if Barry drove by the lot because his surveillance cameras were not functional at the time. He said that Barry sent a text back to Tim at 1:50, "Okay, will do. I'll call to discuss." Well, Barry Morphew never called Tim, and so, Tim never really pursued that. Yeah. Tim explained that a backhoe is an attachment that could easily be used to dig a deep hole or trench in a very short amount of time to investigators, he told this. And another thing is that he didn't even know that Barry Morphew was Suzanne's husband until it came out publicly in the media about her disappearance. In an interview with FBI on February 28th, Barry Morphew said he looked at the backhoe, but he didn't like it and called him and told him he wasn't interested because of the price. This is page 69.
But when they initially discussed this in 2019, he was aware of the price and had no problem with it.
And again, that little blurb is from page 69, so that was later on into the affidavit. But I'm still back on page 53. In March and April of 2021, FBI learned before Barry Morphew left Indiana in 2018, he used a backhoe to dig a large hole in his front yard, fill it with items like furniture, and cover it up, and planted alfalfa on top of it. He also dug holes to hide large sums of money in Indiana per associates and own admission. So Barry Morphew, I guess, admitted to that, that he did that sort of thing. I don't know. Okay, now we're going on page 54 of the arrest affidavit for Barry Morphew. CBD, this is talking about the guy that Barry accused and had a theory that he possibly was the one that took Suzanne because he was dealing drugs to her. And it was really just CBD oil and
to help with her cancer.
They called him CBD Tim, or AK Timothy Agnew. This is an interview with him. He said that, he first met Suzanne at a farmer's market in 2018, and she told him, she was battling cancer and that she was looking for treatment that was non-traditional to buy some type of, because she was feeling run down. And so she made four purchases were made from October 28th until April 2020 for hemp oil. And Tim, and I also, with conversations with some of Suzanne's family members, she had asked the family members who have a hemp business in Michigan about, would this help? How does it help? Which products should I buy? Things like that. So she did her research before buying these products. And, she had also had, her nephews to reference and to ask questions too, as far as which hemp oil is the best and things like that, and what ingredients should I not, stay away from and things like that. Tim only spoke with Barry Morphew once when Barry Morphew called in the summer of 2019 saying that Suzanne's lymphoma was back and she needed more oil. Suzanne never seemed like it was a secret taking these oils around Barry Morphew, or that, Barry Morphew himself disapproved of her taking the oils. So, Tim had no idea why he would be being accused of being a suspect of Suzanne's disappearance.
And I thought that was really interesting too, because a lot of the times when Barry talks about Suzanne having these outbursts or, getting angry, it's because she's drunk or it's because she's on drugs. And I just think that's really interesting because he was very aware of at least this. And so when he kind of implies that, she's taking these drugs or taking street drugs, he knew about it. And in some cases even made the order for her to go get them.
So now we're on page 54. This is an interview with Carrie Waddell, which I have done an interview with her. And she is so sweet. She's kind heart, and I saw her interact with some of her clients before I did the interview, and she's a massage therapist, and she worked out with Suzanne, and that's how she first learned of Suzanne, and she, became a friend to Suzanne, and just even her voice is just so soothing and sweet. Suzanne had told Carrie that throughout her marriage with Barry Morphew, including the time when she lived in Indiana, that she raised her girls by herself. And in November, Suzanne had asked her, can we start going out, like as girlfriends, like friends? It seemed like she wanted to do things with a friend, and she felt when I did the interview with Carrie early on into the investigation in 2020, she regretted that she didn't take her up on that. She felt really bad that maybe Suzanne was, really trying to reach out for help. And you know, she feels terrible that she missed that opportunity. And you know, but anyways, there was mention in this interview with investigators that in November of 2019, Barry Morphew had confronted her at a restaurant. This is Carrie Waddell, and asking her about a back massage. He was saying that his back was, hurting him, and he really wanted to get a massage from her. But before this, Carrie describes to investigators that she felt really creeped out by him. She even said, he was a predator with a huge ego. She would see him in the gym, and that,
he would be watching her.
Yeah, he would make her feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And so when he asked her at the restaurant, hey, could I get a massage from you? She said, I'll have to schedule that through your wife. Kind of making it, I'll talk to your wife about
because
that.
She didn't want to give him her number or anything like that. She didn't want to communicate with him at all.
In an interview with Laura and Andrew Richardson in December, this is really interesting. This is on page 55 of the arrest affidavit. Laura had said that, she went to 3 cancer treatments with Suzanne. And Suzanne had told her that Barry would choose to go to work over going with her to cancer treatments. But when I interviewed Barry Morphew, he insistently told me that he was the only one that cared about her and her cancer treatments, and that
he went to every single one. He never missed one.
He said exactly. He said, I went to every single one. I never, and he even told me to call up the hospital and ask them. And I said, okay, well, what's the nurse's name that Suzanne had, known through doing cancer treatments? And he couldn't even give me a single name of a nurse. And I had been already speaking with some of her nursing friends from Salida that had told me that they only saw Barry Morphew once go to treatment with her. But anyways, back to the arrest affidavit. On May 1st, Laura and a friend named Susie celebrated Suzanne's birthday at Laura's house. And she was coming out of cancer treatment. She said she even felt like a second chance at life. And this is May 1st. So this is a few days before she goes missing. She's thinking, I have a second chance of life.
She was trying to be certified as an athletic trainer.
Yes.
She was trying to get her certification for that.
This is really also interesting, is that the Richardsons, so both Laura and Andrew were with Barry Morphew the night of May 10th when he got back from Broomfield, when he's standing there near the bike scene, watching investigators look for his wife and search the woods for his wife. Yep. They said that they stood there with him for 4 hours on the road. And Andrew wanted to search. This is Laura's husband. They met through church. I actually met Laura at one of the preliminary hearing days, and she was very emotional and, very, very sweet. And Andrew said that, he wanted to go search, he wanted to look around, he wanted to ask questions, he wanted to figure out what the heck was happening to Suzanne. Meanwhile, he says that Barry Morphew was just not interested. And he said that Barry had told him, that you're a really good man. And Andrew said that his expression was stone-faced throughout the evening, and it was just a strange comment that he made. Yeah. He said that Barry told Andrew he made the trip from Denver to Salida. He was like bragging in an hour and 15 minutes or some ridiculous time. And Andrew didn't understand why Barry Morphew waited so long to come home when he thought Suzanne went on a bike ride that morning. So I think those people that were even around him the night of Suzanne's disappearance were already questioning him as far as what he was doing, his actions. On the 3rd or 4th night of Suzanne's missing disappearance, Barry Morphew had been complaining about law enforcement focusing on him. And Andrew spoke with a friend who's a defense attorney in town in Salida and gave Barry Morphew, the attorney's business card and said, hey, this defense attorney would like to talk with you. And he told me to tell you that you need to be taking the polygraph test so that law enforcement can focus elsewhere, someone else. If, because I guess Andrew had told this defense attorney that he was worried that law enforcement was already focused on him and not focused on other people. And Barry said, quote, I don't think I'd pass a polygraph. And Andrew told agents that he got chills from this response, and he even waited to see if Barry Morphew would say anything more to him. This is page 55 if you're following in the affidavit. And remember, his interview with me months after this was that he never was asked to take a polygraph. And we now know that that was not true. On December 4th, Barry called Laura Richardson and at 10:30 a.m. and said, Suzanne's not dead, she's coming back. So now in December of 2020, he's thinking Suzanne's alive.
After he's already sold all of her stuff, gotten rid of the house, taken the money out of her funds.
The house,
the one
in
Indiana.
Oh, the Indiana,
yeah.
And the guardianship, and so now we're going on to an interview with Holly Wilson, which is a friend from church of the couple, of Suzanne and Barry Morphew. Her and her husband are friends with the couple. And from October to December, she recorded phone interviews with Barry, or phone conversations with Barry Morphew, and in-person conversations. And one of them, she said, or Barry Morphew told him, you are Suzanne to me. And he held her hand, this is Holly Wilson's hand, while in the car, gave her a kiss goodnight, and told her that Suzanne would approve of whatever would happen in their relationship, and twice touched Holly's breasts, pretending like the touches were accidents when her husband's head was turned away or not looking. And this is straight from the arrest affidavit on page 57 if you're following along. Barry Morphew told Holly an ex-FBI agent was working for him, and he had a private investigator working for him who charged him over $50,000, but really didn't tell her who that person was, the name of. One time Holly wondered out loud about Suzanne's Facebook getting hacked. She said, if I had to bet, I'd say it wasn't her, meaning Suzanne, that was doing that. She wasn't like that. And that was page 58. When Holly asked Barry Morphew what was the last thing he said to Suzanne, which is something I asked in my interview, like, whenever a loved one dies, I always remember the last thing I said to that person, or the last time I was with that person, and what they look like, and I can describe them, and I can say exactly what they say. And Holly was asking that of Barry, and he never really told her. He said, I don't even know. It was just a normal night. We just ate dinner together, had a quiet evening like we do. He never described the last image of Suzanne to Holly. Holly's spouse asked Barry if someone would do, if someone had Suzanne, what would they do? And he said, what if they kept her in a basement? And Holly then followed up saying, well, what about, for 6 months they've kept Suzanne in a basement, really? And he replied, Barry Morphew replied saying, if that's the case, then she's underwater, because there's no evidence of anything else that's surface. So now he's suggesting that maybe Suzanne is underwater, in a river, in a lake, a body of water. And this was a new theory that I had, throughout the affidavit that has not been mentioned. He blamed God, I felt like, a lot. And even in my interview, one of the first questions he asked me was, do you believe in God? And I said, yes, I do believe in God. What does this have to do with your wife missing? And on page, let me see, 58, I believe, or 59, he says, I truly believe that her disappearance was out of anyone's hands but God's, and God allowed that to happen for some reason, and we might never know until we get to heaven. Now, on January 26th, this is the first time, allegedly, that Barry learned of the affair. He mentions it multiple times during this interview, that he had no idea. He claims that he had never seen it on her phone. How was she? That was a quote that he asked agents about the affair. If you guys are trying to tell me that I found out about this and did something that's completely wrong. So him saying, you know, if you're trying to make me look bad, that's wrong because I didn't know about this affair or whatever. And in a conversation on the spy pen, Barry Morphew asked Suzanne to tell him if she loved him, and she could never answer that she loved him. And unfortunately, there's no date on that, at least in the affidavit, there's no date on when that recording was. And Barry was asked if he could remember that in this interview on January 26th of 2021, and he shook his head, but then later replied, yeah, I remembered, and started crying audibly. This is page 60 of the affidavit. And now he's starting to say, like, if this affair were to come out of Suzanne and Jeff Libler, he's saying that as soon as they find out, I'm not sure if he's talking about the media, the public, his daughters, they're gonna say, old hothead Barry found out and killed his wife, end quote. This is, again, from the arrest affidavit that Barry had allegedly said in interviews with investigators. And then when he was asked about the suicide texts after the I'm done text, Barry Morphew told law enforcement, I was just trying to hurt her. He, you know, went back to his religion, and he said, I have been a Christian my whole life. I have trust that he did this for a reason. So again, he's blaming God for the disappearance of Suzanne. I fought 2 battles of cancer with her, page 62. Going to 5 different trash cans and throwing all kinds of crap away. I've done that my whole entire life. I'm a tightwad and I don't want to pay for trash pickups. This is a quote from page 63. And I'm curious to know if his daughters would agree that he's a tightwad, or if he, you know, threw away trash on multiple trips.
And this was in reference to when he went to Broomfield, talking about the multiple stops that he made throwing away different items.
Now he's accusing of Suzanne of physically attacking him. He says, quote, she's physically come at me several times through my life and I took it, and I'm a man and I'm tough and I can take it. Gotta lie about the scratch marks in front of people when they're on my face, but that is the only time I ever touched her, and I swear to God I would never lay a hand on my wife, and that was just a crazy reflex. And in the affidavit, this is noted that on May 13th, there were scratch marks on his arms, his upper left arm, and investigators noted that it was looked like they had been scabbed over. This is a couple days after Suzanne was reported missing, and that they looked like
3 parallel lines.
Yeah, and in the affidavit, you can actually see the photo, but it's black and white, so you can't. It's not the greatest image that you can see, but. You know, Barry Morphew claims that those scratch marks came from trees when he was searching for Suzanne.
And I thought it was really interesting, too, going back to his religion. One of the things that he said, you know, he's trying to make sense of all of this with the affair and her missing and everything like that. And he said maybe in God's eyes, this was his way of resolving something. And I just thought that was really interesting. I don't know if he's referring to, you know, their marital issues, the affair, different things of that sort. But I'd be curious to know what he was implying as far as resolving. What was he resolving?
Okay. Okay, another thing about the affair is that he told investigators, if we can keep this private between us forever, that's all I would ever want. This is page 64 of the arrest affidavit. And it's sad because of this investigation and because of what happened to Suzanne, all of the family's dirty laundry is out for the public to see and to hear about and to know about. And I
feel bad for the daughters because I'm sure this is not something they would ever want to find out, but specifically not this way, not in the public manner where now everybody knows that this is what their mom was doing and different things that were happening in their parents' relationships. So I feel for them in that regard because I know that's not something easy to process when you find that out.
Yeah. In an interview, so now we're into an interview in January 28th.
And this is 2021 now.
Yeah, 2021. So he says, quote, when I was questioning Suzanne, about New Orleans trip, showing further evidence of a suspected affair. So what he's saying is that, you know, he's questioning Suzanne about this trip that she went to New Orleans about, and that this shows investigators that he was suspecting affair. And that New Orleans trip is when she met up with Jeff Libler, one of 6 states that she met up with.
Yeah, there were multiple.
Or 6 different times, I should say. He said, quote, because I have no evidence of my wife being dead, this is page 66, so now he still believes that she's alive. This is in January again. But the day before this, he had thought that maybe she was under a beaver dam.
He did have a theory that once, you know, he kind of moved on from the bike, the mountain lion, you know, all of those, he kind of started going towards maybe she was attacked or something happened and she ran and ended up in the river, maybe hit her head on a rock and ended up in there, or was trying to run away from something and ended up in the river. And he kind of hung on to that idea a little bit longer than a lot of the other ones.
Yeah. This is an interesting quote he made to investigators. He said, all of them freaking liberals don't recall anything when they don't want to tell the truth. This is page 67. And this is in reference to when people say, I don't recall, I can't remember. He's saying, you know, he blames liberals for that saying because they're not telling the truth, they're lying.
Yeah.
But in reference, he said it more than 98 times, and at one point in the investigation, detectives and FBI agents couldn't even count how many times he had said it in their interviews. He also said on page 68 in this arrest affidavit, quote, I'm not gonna go do anything to this guy, in reference to Jeff Libler. And at this point, he does not know his name. The investigators are not telling him, are keeping that from him and not telling him his name.
He asks a lot. He wants to know, you know, is it somebody that he knows? Was it his friend? Was it an ex-boyfriend? Was it somebody in Indiana? Like, he just keeps asking questions and saying that, you know, he just wants to know so he has peace of mind.
Peace of mind, yeah.
And he says in a different interview that he's not going to kill him, but he'd probably punch him pretty hard in the face if he ever met him.
Yeah, quote, I'm not going to do anything to this guy, and do you believe me when I say I had no idea this was even happening? So again, he's saying, like, I don't know. I don't know about this affair. You know, you're just telling me this month.
I also find it really interesting because he does this a lot.
But remember, there was 3 Jeffs that were friend requested on May 8th.
He says something to this effect in a lot of interviews when he's talking about his daughters and kind of what they're going through. So right after he said, I'm not going to do anything to this guy, he says, I can't afford to leave the only parent that my daughter has. And he does that a lot where he only specifically talks about one daughter. He doesn't say it in the plural he has 2 girls. But he does that a lot in referring to leaving Macy alone. Is it Macy? It could be Mallory he's talking about. But in the one, he talks about, I have a 17-year-old daughter. What is she going to do if I go to jail? And so I just think it's really interesting that he's only really talking about what's going to happen to Macy if he were to go to jail. He doesn't really talk about both of the girls in general.
In this interview, he had already made at least 13 assertions by his third interview let me go back. By his third interview, after the FBI agents had told him about this affair, he had already made 13 assertions of, like, most of them unsolicited, that he had no idea about the affair. and that he had asked the agents multiple times, do you believe me? You know,
He wanted them to say that they believe him.
Yeah. Okay, now let's move on to February 28th interview. On page 69, he said, quote, I'm being cooperative, trying to help you, that you would give me the name of this guy. That's all I want for peace of mind, like what you said. And at this interview, February 28th, he is still been told by Agent Grusing with the FBI that he has not been cleared yet in Suzanne's homicide. So he's been informed that Suzanne is dead because it's a homicide investigation, and he's not been cleared by February 28th. And it's interesting because I did an interview with Shoshana around the same time. This is Shoshana Dark, the alleged girlfriend of Barry Morphew, and she claimed that he had been cleared. So that's interesting. Okay, page 70, quote, it doesn't matter. Your evidence does not matter because if it's anything to do with tying me with her disappearance, it's wrong, quote. Grusing wanted him to look at the evidence, and Barry Morphew said, you know that there is nothing on my phone that shows that I knew about her affair. You're trying to say if I knew about that, then I did something. Grusing told Barry Morphew about the activities on his phone, adding that he left his driver door open in the garage before he went to the first patio, and that when Johnny Grusing was telling him this, he said, and his explanation was shooting chipmunks, and he said that I've done that ever since we moved in. So that's the whole chipmunk part.
Yeah.
You can take them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to let my dogs out real quick, so I apologize if there's barking.
So this is the end of my notes, actually. So I'm gonna just kind of go over the arrest affidavit through the highlights that I've done, but not specifically through the notes that I have put out there. A lot of the end of the affidavit was presented in the preliminary hearing, and so a lot of this information that is in the affidavit was mentioned in the preliminary hearing. So page 71 is where I left off. I had underlined, I wonder if the daughters also agreed about Barry Morphew shooting chipmunks a lot. There's only one mentioning at the very beginning of interviews with the daughters and what their statements were. It seemed like from what we learned in the preliminary hearing is that the daughters didn't do a lot of interviews after the initial report of Suzanne going missing. All right, page 72. So throughout this whole last bit of the arrest affidavit, it lays out how investigators slowly provided evidence to Barry Morphew, and when he started saying, I don't recall, or he started switching and contradicting what he was telling investigators from his previous interviews with them. So February 29th is when Barry Morphew hands the chipmunk gun to investigators. It's a .22 caliber altered rifle with a newly mounted rifle scope. And in the photo that's in the arrest affidavit, it's a body cam photo, or a photo from the body cam. You can see one agent is holding the gun, and Barry Morphew is kind of leaning out of his truck talking to investigators. That was on February 29th. In March 1st, there was another interview. In this interview, again, Barry Morphew's altering his prior statements. He said this is when he said that he turned left on Highway 50 instead of going away from where the helmet was. And this is when he mentions the elk, that he wanted to go check out the elk, which was in the direction of where Suzanne's helmet was found. This was the first time that Barry admitted to turning left on Highway 50 from the Broomfield route. So he was going the opposite direction of where he needed to go to Broomfield to do this job, the wall job. Okay, so that's page 73. There's also really interesting like maps that you can see in the arrest affidavit of like the location of where the bike was found versus where the helmet was found, versus, you know, where he allegedly turned around in Garfield, versus where he needed to go to Denver, to near Broomfield, to go do that job. So again, if you haven't read the arrest affidavit, I would definitely read it. It's a lot, 130 pages, but I'm trying to give the highlights right now. Someone is asking if I'm related to Sarah. I am not related to Sarah. We're just good friends and coworkers.
We're besties.
On March 5th is another interview, and this interview, Barry Morphew asked for immunity. He asked not to go be thrown in jail, and said that there was no evidence demonstrated how he placed his phone in airplane mode, and that Suzanne made him a monster and things just blew up. And he also further explained the chipmunk gun and shooting chipmunks, as well as the elk story heading west on Highway 50. He also, the agent, FBI agent Grusing, had said that agents were working a homicide case. So again, in March, they have told Barry Morphew that this is a homicide case. It's no longer just a missing persons case. It's a homicide case, and that they wanted to work with Barry to clear him if possible. They had not confirmed to him, again, that he was cleared. He said, quote,